Hello students, this is the recording for lesson 2.01 and we're going to be doing some chemistry review during this lesson. Here's a description of what we're going to be going over today. We're going to be going over what matter is, elements, atoms, and the different parts of an atom, which are protons, neutrons, and electrons. In order to understand the later concepts in the class, we need to make sure that you understand just some of the basic foundational concepts of chemistry. So here are some of the goals for this lesson. You're going to be able to relate the importance of knowing chemistry to understanding the different processes of life that we're going to go over. You're going to be able to describe different parts of an atom, the differences between different atoms, and explain what an element is, so you'll know its definition, and describe how and where elements occur on Earth. So first, let's look big picture and define what matter is. So if we were to look at popcorn, soft drinks, clouds, a tree, a car, all of those things actually have one thing in common, and it's that they are all considered matter. Matter is everything in the universe that takes up space and has mass. Even the things that you can't see, such as air, viruses, and water vapor, are considered matter. Matter on Earth exists most often in the form of elements. So this is one of the key words that you need to know for this lesson. Elements are one of the most fundamental kinds of matter. An element is, as you will soon see, a substance that is made up of only one kind of atom. So again, an element is made up of only one kind of atom. You may be familiar with some elements such as silver, copper, and carbon. What's unique about these elements is that each of them have a unique set of characteristics that really determine how it interacts with other elements. So here you see in this picture, you see some forks, knives, and spoons, and these utensils are made up of silver, which is an element. There's also this wire right here made out of copper, which is another element. And then there's some carbon in this coal, which is also another type of element. So again, all these three pictures that you just saw are made up of only one type of atom, silver, copper, and carbon. And because they're only made up of one type of atom, we call it an element. So we actually know around 115 different elements that exist on Earth, and 92 of them actually exist naturally. However, a lot of these we can't actually find in pure form. So that means that they're actually connected and bonded to other elements as well. For example, an easy one is like water. Water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. It's not just hydrogen and not just oxygen, but is made up of both of them. So we wouldn't consider water as a pure form of an element, right? Because it's made up of more than one atom. However, there are two different elements that are actually found in pure form. We have iron and we also have copper that are found in pure form, which means that we can find them by itself. And the discovery of these two elements, iron and copper, really made a huge impact on society because that's what people started using to make tools as well as weapons. To organize all of these elements, scientists have arranged them in something called a periodic table. And so the periodic table shows all of the elements that are known currently, and they're organized based on their characteristics that really determine how they interact with other chemical compounds that exist. Only 4 elements make up more than 96% of the mass of all living things. So that would include hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. So even though there's approximately 115 elements that we know of, actually 4 of them make up more than 96% of all mass. You see here that there are letters and there are also numbers. So the letters is a symbol that we use in order to represent a single atom of an element. For example, right here, we see that C, this represents carbon. And then something like O would represent oxygen. The numbers is the atomic number, which is something we'll be talking about in a later slide. So we've gone over how elements are made of atoms. Remember, elements are made up of one type of atom. That doesn't mean that there is only one atom present, but that the element are made up of similar atoms together. So if you took any element, for example carbon, and this right here is a picture of carbon, and you were to divide it again and again until you found its smallest repeating unit, you would find an atom. And so you see here, if you were to look really closely, actually you can't even look at it through a microscope, but scientists know through different experiments that the smallest unit would actually be an atom. And this is what a carbon atom looks like. So although atoms have different characteristics, their overall structure is very similar. First, we have in the middle of an atom, we have a nucleus. And the nucleus has two different components to it. The first ones are protons. Protons actually have a positive electric charge, and they're found in the nucleus. Also found in the nucleus are neutrons, and neutrons actually they don't have any charge, so it's not a positive or a negative charge. They're just neutral. So that's in the nucleus right here. If we were to look outside of the nucleus, you would see electrons, and electrons are much smaller than protons and neutrons, and they have a negative electric charge. And so you see them in rings outside of the nucleus. And so you see protons have positive charges, electrons have negative, and neutrons have neutral. And generally, this is the structure of all atoms. So the overall electrical charge of an atom can change. So typically an atom has the same amount of protons, so the positively charged particles in the nucleus, so they have the same amount of protons as they have electrons. So you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 protons here, and we also have 5 electrons as well. So if we have 6 protons and 6 electrons, they cancel each other out, and we have an overall neutral electrical charge. And that's typically how you would find atoms. However, atoms can routinely lose, gain, and share electrons. If an atom loses an electron, so say we get rid of one of the electrons, then that means we have 6 protons and we would have 5 electrons. So the overall charge would be +1. Sometimes, instead of losing an electron though, an atom can actually gain an electron, right? So instead of having 6 electrons, it can have 7. So we have 6 protons, 7 electrons, right? So the overall charge would then be -1. So either in this case, whether you gain or you lose an electron, you see that there's going to be an overall electrical charge. It's not going to be just neutral. When that happens, we actually call them ions. Okay, so when an atom has an electrical charge, we now give it a new name called an ion. Okay, so elements differ based on the number of protons in their atoms. Different elements have a different number of protons in their atoms. An atom of carbon always has 6 protons, and this is what when we are talking about the atomic number, the number that you saw in the periodic table, this is where it comes from. Because carbon has 6 protons, its atomic number is 6. An element has a specific atomic number. Every element has a specific atomic number, so it's not like all of them are 6, but each of them have a unique atomic number. For example, nitrogen has 7 protons, so then nitrogen's atomic number would be 7, right? Like you see right here. And oxygen has 8 protons, so oxygen's atomic number would be 8, like you see right here. So oxygen and nitrogen have more protons than carbon, and thus their atomic number is greater. So that's just a little bit of review of the chemistry that you're going to need to know for this class. We went over what matter is and how everything is made up of matter. We went over what elements are, how they're made up of similar atoms. And then we also went over the structure of atoms, which are protons, right, which have positive charges, neutrons, which are neutral, and then we had electrons, which are negative. Here's some important vocabulary that you need to know from this lesson. Went over matter, elements, atoms, proton, neutrons, electrons, and ions, which remember is an atom that either has a positive or negative electrical charge. And that can happen from the gain or loss of an electron.